Thank you very much, everyone, and we do welcome you to Infotrak Research and Consulting. We're always privileged to have you on short notice. So today we've invited you. There's a series of releases that we'll be doing starting today for our national poll that we did conduct in the month of August towards September. And the reason as to why we did this, of course, we know the current administration were marking their third year in office since the president and his teams were inaugurated. And as our norm, we do provide information time to time, and that really prompted the reason as to why we wanted to carry out this public opinion poll as we've done before. This is a self-funded opinion poll funded by Infotrak Research and Consulting. And when we say it's self-funded, it means it is us who paid for it. So it's not being sponsored by anyone. It was done on the date of 13th to 14th of August, covering a total of 2,400 respondents. These are adult Kenyans across the nation. And that gives us a margin of plus or minus plus or minus 2%, meaning for every figure that you'll be seeing, it could be a plus, it could be more with 2, or it could be less by 2%. Moving on. So this is how the sample was distributed. This is how the sample was distributed. And we can just see, based on the regions, we've looked at Kenya as a region. And when we talk of Kenya as a region, you know we are looking at the former provinces. So that is how we did distribute that sample size, with the larger region taking up, that is Rift Valley. We did interview 614, all the way to the smaller region, the northeastern, which we interviewed 95 respondents. So this was conducted through computer telephonic interview. We've had some of you in the past visit our call center where we conduct these interviews from a pool of adult Kenyans who've agreed to form part of our panel. And this part of our panel, those are the people we did engage, and of course they did consent to be interviewed. So today we'll be only releasing about 4 parts. And these 4 parts, because the survey had several parts, we've chosen not to bombard the nation with a lot of information, but we've synthesized it into 4 key areas. So the first key area that we shall be highlighting for us is direction the country is heading, the key issues of concern, what concerns we as Kenyans, the cost of living, and of course the reasons behind, or perceived reasons behind, the cost of living. So that gives us a summary of that cost, the summary of what we are going to release today. So when we start with the direction of the country, or direction the country is headed to, I know we'll give you a trend analysis, and we've done this since 2013 so that you can see the trajectory, whether we are doing good as a nation or we are not doing quite good. So when this question was posed, the direction the country is headed, of course, we can see there is a widespread, people are not really optimistic about the country. 57% opined that the country is headed in the wrong direction. And some of the highlights, some of the reasons they gave is the high cost of living. Then, of course, there is poor governance, unemployment. There is issues to do with SHA or SHIF. And of course, only 17% believe the country is headed in the right direction. Only 17%. That to mean, in the nearest whole number, if I meet 5 Kenyans, only 1 out of 5 would say the country is headed in the right direction. And of course, for those that believe the country is headed in the right direction, some of the reasons they attribute it to is that at least the country is enjoying relative peace at 41%. Then the government is perceived to be doing well, mentioned by 37%. So in terms of what we depict from the reasons as to why we believe the country, majority believe the country is headed into the wrong direction, they revolves around economic issues. And of course, there are a lot of pain points in our wallets. The people feel the wallets are a bit fringed. And of course, there's also something to do with the government having something to do with taxes. All these things are around government intervention or lack of it. So if you can see the trend analysis, which I told you we've done over the years, we took from September 2023, where it was at 57, it moved to 63% in May last year. In September last year, it was at 50%. Those who opined the country is headed in the wrong direction. Then, of course, still last year in August, a total of 73% believe the country is headed in the wrong direction. That has really dropped from 73% to the current 57%. So at least you can see a bit of improvement. As of October last year, only 11% mentioned the country is headed in the right direction. We can see the figures now changed to a total of 17%. At least there is a positive change of 6% with those that are optimistic the direction the country is taking. Of course, we've also analyzed this based on the regions, and you can see the region that scored the highest for the for the right direction is Northeastern at 24%. It's still a low figure, but at least you can see, whereas places like Central, only 10% believe the country is headed in the right direction. On the wrong direction, still, Central is leading. You can see a bit of pessimism from Central, Western Province, or Western Region, then Eastern Region. Places like Nyanza, only 53, that's about an average, who feel the country is headed in the wrong direction. But again, also you can see a good number of those who mention neither wrong or right direction. And this, we see it highest in Nairobi, at least a quarter, 25% mentioning the same. Moving on, there's not much difference when we look at the age bands. When we look at the age bands, and of course when we look at the gender, there is not much difference between the male and female. You can see the number is not quite significant. Only 19% of male stating the country is headed in the right direction, and of course for their 15% for their counterpart. And of course, when we look at the age bands, a bit of optimism from the Gen Zs. Maybe their actions started bearing fruit, because the right direction was mentioned by 25%. For the older, or for the mature adults from 46 years and above, you can see the numbers are quite low, 13% and 16%. So at least a level of optimism from the younger people. Moving on, I had highlighted at least a few facts for those who opined that the country is headed in the right direction. What are some of the reasons they attribute this to? They're mentioning here there's peace in the country, mentioned by 41%, government doing well, economy stabilizing, mentioned by 28%, the governor, like my governor, is in power or working well, 13%. The single digits were cost of living, 6, establishment of SHA, education. Some also believe the education standards have improved, devolution making a difference, mentioned by 4%. Then, of course, the cooperation between ODM and UDA was mentioned by 4%. Are some of the reasons. Actually, it was mentioned by 1%. Are some of the reasons as to why the country is headed in the right direction. On the flip side, and I believe this would give us more overall opinion. So I want us to check for those who believe the country is headed in the wrong direction. And you can see we've trended it for the past 3 waves. And that is September 2024, October last year, and August now. And you can see the constant across has been high cost of living. So I believe this is one of the reasons as to why the citizens feel the country is headed into the wrong direction. You can see it has moved from 77% in September to where it was last year, 43%, and currently still going higher at 66%. Then another constant has been unemployment from 46, 43 to current 30%. Poverty tied to unemployment. Then, of course, there is poor governance. Poor governance was stated in October last year. It's still an issue, being mentioned by 15%. SHIF and SHA, that is now something that is coming out. As of October, when it was launched last year, actually this poll we did when it was launched, only 1% had mentioned issues with 1% shifting from SHIF, from NHIF to SHA was mentioned by 1%. However, today 15% attribute it as one of the reasons the country is headed in the wrong direction. Moving on, we've done this analysis. You'll get this report. We've done it by region. And of course, you can see peace is dominating across, save for Northeastern, where 46 opine that the government is doing well as the key leading reason, as one of the key leading reasons. And of course, peace also mentioned by 55%. If you check Central, the key reason, peace. Then, of course, government doing well, only mentioned by 38%. Nairobi, the key reason, government doing well, mentioned by 42%, and peace mentioned by 38%. And of course, I won't belabor on gender and age bands, because if you check the figures, no much difference. 40 to 42, male, female. Then, of course, another 40 to... That is significant, at least 6% difference between male and female for those who mention the country is doing well. So, moving on to another reasons. What do Kenyans say are the critical issues that needs to be addressed as a matter of priority? If you relate with the reasons the country is headed in the wrong direction, you will see some of those facts coming out, and that will explain their rating above. Remember, these are never given. We don't give choices. The choices, we mine it from the respondents. The respondents mention them on their own. So, a quick highlight. We can pinpoint 5 key issues. And these key issues marries well with the reasons why the country is headed in the wrong direction. You can see high cost of living was mentioned by 40%, unemployment 36%. Then of course here, another thing that they want the government to deal with is issue of SHA, mentioned by 27%. Remember, 15% had mentioned it as one of the reasons as to why they attribute the country headed into the wrong direction. Corruption, 25%, still high. That's almost a quarter of the respondents. Then we move to high cost of education, mentioned by 25%. If you look at the regional variations, quite slight variations, whereas there are regions that were talking about cost of living as the top issues, then unemployment really came out in the coastal region. Coastal region were mentioning unemployment, things to do with SHIF and SHA, also largely featured from Central and Rift Valley and partly from Nyanza. So at least we've given some implications which then the government needs to look into to address some of these key issues of concern. I can show us that looking at the topmost is that high cost of living. Then of course we move to unemployment, then access to quality and affordable education. We believe or we've noticed there's a lot of outcry both from the faculty and of course the students. We've seen the strikes that are ongoing now amongst the dons. Then of course we've seen an outcry from the school administrators about issues to do with computation, either delayed computation or reduction in computation. And of course, your children being sent away to go look for fee for schools that cannot manage. When we talk about healthcare or SHIF or SHA issues, we've seen currently RUFA had given an ultimate to all their members to withdraw or to stop treating patients unless you pay. And I've seen it is covered extensively in the media houses where hospitals are now telling patients to go home. They're discharging patients because they cannot afford to keep them in the hospital. And that really buttressed the 27% who believe that SHA is a critical issue that the government need to focus on. Of course, there's overtaxation, perceived overtaxation, mentioned by 20%. Infrastructure, still a double digit, 15%. There is access to quality and affordable healthcare. So if you combine this 13% of healthcare, combined specifically with issues to do with SHA, we are seeing us moving towards a 40% mark. Because that is 27 plus 13, 40. It would have been where this cost of living is. So healthcare is a major concern for every citizen. Then of course there are other things like cost of doing business, access to clean water, mentioned by 4%, equal distribution of resources also is being highlighted as a key issue that our government need to focus on. We've done 2 trends. What was it last year? What is it now? October, high cost of living was at 40%. That has not changed. It's remained a constant. Same sample size interviewed last year. As of today, 2,400. Unemployment, Whereas it was at 29%, today it is being said as a reason by 36%. Access to quality and affordable healthcare was mentioned by 27 last year. Of course, now education has overtaken healthcare as the third most. Then, of course, SHA combined with access to education. If we would combine that, then of course it's still a critical issue. But we wanted to separate it so that at least SHA, being an independent, it's of course within the Social Health Authority, they can capture it on its own. Then of course there are still cross-cutting issues. Overtaxation was mentioned by 17% last year. Then overtaxation has been mentioned by 20%. So you can see the issues, the top issues have not changed. So my question would be, what is the government doing? Are they addressing these issues when we get it from the citizenry? We go to our third issue, which is cost of living. And of course, you can see these are intertwined. Direction, key issues of concern. Then now, specifically, we wanted to look at the share of the wallet. How has it been for the last 1 year? The cost, if you had 1,000 bob last year and you have 1,000 bob today, if you're to buy groceries, would you get the same quality quantity, or is it a reduction in quality quantity? And the verdict from Kenyans is there's severity in terms of 70% believe that the current cost of living is quite high. If you meet 10 Kenyans, 7 of them will talk about high cost of living. That's how severe it is. Then, of course, it's even higher if you compare it with last year, because 79% reported to us that if they compare their share or the cost of running their households and what they're running their households or businesses, if they have businesses, if you do the comparison for the 2 year, then 79% feel it has really gone up high. So what should the government do? And of course, when we check at the demographics profile, a good number of older adults, remember, they were the ones who were a bit pessimistic, the older people. And again, in terms of cost of living, I believe because they're the breadwinners, a majority are the breadwinners in their households, they still report that the cost of living is quite high, those that are within the bracket of 50 and above. And so what do government really need to do? Do they need to widen that cash transfer, which is now pegged within those 70 years plus? Can they lower it and consider even 60 years old and put it within there? That's out for them there to decide, so that they can mitigate the outcry amongst this older generation. Then, of course, there's need to look for the impact. Of course, the government policies like taxations or policies that are in place for agriculture or production, giving subsidized fertilizers, certified seeds, has it had a good impact in terms of reducing the cost of living? I'm not so sure when 70% still perceive the cost of living to be high. Of course, if we now break down this our pig, then you look at 76%. If you add 76 to 24%, that's 70%. Red zone, only 5%. And of course, remember this, our survey cut across those who haves and the have-nots, because it's random survey. It's talking to all cadres of Kenyans. So maybe the 5% among the middle to high income earners. Let me say a combined 13%. Those that are Maybe they did well, their yields did well, because there are regions that reported good yields from their farms, so they don't feel the impact. And of course, there are also maybe those who maybe still have jobs, their jobs were not affected, they could still report stable income. And but if you look at the upper chunk, even for those who say it's average, the 17%, likelihood of it turning to be on the red is quite easy. And of course, there's no major difference. We went to changes. We asked them, how do you compare the cost of living today and a year ago? You can see 63% saying it is much higher as it was last year. Then, of course, 16% say it's somewhat higher. It has remained the same, mentioned by 12%. But there's a 4% who say things have eased up. So that's how the society plays. There are those who feel the heat, and of course, there are those who now feel with the interventions from the government and maybe their own effort in terms of doubling their effort in their businesses, things are being managed well. Lastly, if we look at the main reasons, we asked them, what could you say are the main reasons causing this high cost of living? Because we've definitely reported it is high. We've seen the figures, it is high. 70% saying it is high. 79% saying it is even higher compared to last year. One is taxation. There is a perception that our taxes are a bit higher. Then, of course, 19% talk of the global economic factors. We know fuel prices control everything. The wars that are ongoing either in the Middle East, and of course Russia, Ukraine, those ones, they are associated. And of course we hear our duty bearers mention it, time without numbers, are some of the reasons why tomatoes are costly, why sukuma wiki is costly, the war in Russia and Ukraine, of course, Israel, Palestinian, those are global. And of course, 16% mentions government policies, and these government policies, remember, for those that are employed like most of us in this room, or all of us in this room, there was a reduction on what you are taking home. When the government raided your pay slip with SHA, reduction of that 2.75%, then of course there is the affordable housing, which is also a tax. Those are government policies. So they reduced what you're taking home. So definitely they could be some of the reasons as to why if you're affording 3 square meals, you have to scale down to 2 square meals. If they're still square, maybe they're round meals. Then of course, corruption mentioned by 16%. Remember, corruption has featured in all the 3 sectors. One thing that they want addressed, corruption, 25%. Reasons why they feel the country is headed into the wrong direction, corruption featured again. And again here, 14% still say corruption is one thing that is causing this high cost of living. Then of course, lack of employment opportunity. Remember, employment was mentioned as the second reason or second key issue of concern that the citizenry want the government to address.